In this episode, we're adding a 3, 2, 1 countdown timer to the beginning of the race, and we're also going to be prettying up the HUD to display our timers, and we're going to add a little sprite for our nitros and some flags and make that whole area at the bottom of the screen a little bit nicer.
I'm Xanderwood. I make indie games and tutorials on game development. I also play your indie games every week on my channel. Make sure you subscribe and click that bell icon so you never miss a video.
Okay, so if we play the game now, this little HUD area down here looks very, very poor. I don't like the style of the text, and I don't like the look of it. It looks pretty bland, it looks pretty boring. It doesn't really tell you what each thing is. These things go white when we cover over the walls here, so let's start fixing that straight away. First thing I'm going to do is select all the text, and I'm going to change the text to a downloaded text that I've downloaded called Pixeled. I'm going to set the size to 3. If you don't have this text, you can go over to Defont, and I clicked on the bitmap pixel fonts and I picked one here. You can pick any one you like, just make sure the rights allow you to use it in whichever way you want. There are also options to select only 100% free for personal use, donationware, shareware, etc. So make sure that whatever you use is free to use for whatever purpose you want to use it for. When you've got it downloaded onto your computer, come over to the folders on the right hand side where it says fonts. You can right click and you can import fonts, and then you would just select them from your computer and import them. Once you've done that, they are then going to appear over here in the font section, and it's as simple as that. Okay, these ones over here now, because we've changed the font, they don't look quite so good. I'm going to drop them down a little bit. I'm also going to vertically align them to the center. Oh, they already are. I'm going to need to drag that up a little bit. Bring that down, drag it up, bring it down, drag it up, and make sure they're all spaced out nicely. Okay, that's looking better. So this one up here in the top left, this is our timer. So what I want to do now is I want to get some new text. So if we come over here into the project window, I've put all of my items that I'll be using into its own off-road folder. If we come down on here and we find, I think, just text here. Perfect. We're going to use just the text because this will be just the generic text. I'm going to change the font over to the pixel font that we were using. I'm going to change the color down here to white. And I'm going to change the size down to 4. What size were we using here? 3. Change that down to 3. I'm going to resize this text box, and I want it to be exactly the same. So this was center on the vertical, center on the horizontal. I want this to be left on the horizontal, but I want it to be center on the vertical. So when I line it up, it's the same. There. And this one is going to say time or timer. Let me just play that and see how that looks. Okay, I want that to be the other way around, so let's move that. Let's put that over here in the top left. I can shrink this down because I know the size of the box now, and then I'm going to justify this to the left there, in line with that. I'm going to do the same for this one. This one's going to be nitros, so I can just copy out that, bring that down, change this to nitros, and I can bring this along and make sure it's in line with that one. There we go. That's looking already a little bit better. In my Space Attack game, I've got this all set to capital letters, so I think I'm going to do that for this one as well, just to make it consistent. You don't have to do that, but I want it to be consistent across all the mini games in this game. Nitros, timer, perfect. Now this HUD background here, this is white at the moment, and as you can see when we play, when we overlay these walls, everything disappears. So I'm going to change the color of this to black, And that already looks a lot better. So when we do go over the walls, we can still see to some degree the timer, but I'm going to make the opacity a little darker. At the moment it's 30%, let's take it up to 50% and just quickly take a look at that. Yeah, that's much better. So now we can see exactly what's going on in terms of our nitros. Perfect. Now what I want to do is instead of having a number here, I want to set this to a bit more of a visual representation. So I'm going to double click, oh, not on the text, I'm going to double click outside of the layout and I'm going to add in a tile background. And I'm just going to draw this in 4 by 4. In fact, I want it to be a little taller than I do white. So I'm going to do 8 by 4. I'm going to go to white. I'm going to draw a box. And then I'm going to fill it black. You can see it brings out a nice big grid. But I just want to shrink that down to that. So it's the original 8 pixels high if you look over here on the side. And then the width, in fact, let's go back into it a sec. Let's set the width to 6, because that gives me a blank space on either side, which will separate these. There, perfect. And these are going to now represent how many nitros we have. I don't know if I want to make them a little bit smaller actually. Let's make the height 6 as well. And then we'll draw that off. Just for shading purposes, let's give a grey edge down one side, and let's give a slightly darker grey outline to the bottom and the right hand side. Okay, perfect. Now we can take this text and we can put it down here. I can colour it black. We don't necessarily need it, but I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to put my nitros there, and I'm going to take that off global. I'm going to name that TB underscore nitros. So this is going to be the visual representation of the nitros, and all we're going to do in the event sheet is set the width of this to how many nitros we have. Now the width at the moment is 6, and that includes the little blank. In fact, let's set the width to 5. And that'll give us one line on the right, because we don't need one either side, because then it doubles up, see? So now we can set, that looks better, and it's in line with that now as well. Yeah, that's much better. So now we can go into the event sheet, and we can go up, we can close lap times, we can close nitros. We're going to go on setup under every tick, and we're going to say, because we've got here at the moment under every tick, we've got to set the text of nitros, the text, set the nitros text to how many nitros we have. Now we're going to add an action, and we're going to say TB nitros, and we're going to say set width. Here it is. And we're going to set the width to nitros, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. But because the width of our tile background is more than that, we need to multiply it by the width, which is 5. Remember, we changed it from 6 to 5. So now when we have 0, the width will be 0. But when we have 1, the width will be 5. So even if I leave that fully out to show that we've got 5 nitros, when we start the game, it's going to say nothing. And when we pick one up, the width is going to jump to 1. And now it will jump to 3, because that was a 2. And then we can take one away. 2 more picked up. And we missed that one. But now you can see it's gone back down to 0. And I think that looks a little bit nicer. Because you can always have, you can have too much text in a game, and I don't like that. So I want to set that to display as a visual representation. Over here we've got the lap times, and I want to put a little sprite next to these with a checkered flag. So let's include a sprite. Now again, similar kind of dimensions to the nitros, a 6 by 5. So let's get the white. Go straight up the left hand side, straight across, straight down, like a P shape really. Let's colour that in white. Ooh. Add flood fill. And now let's get the black. And then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, there. I think that I don't think we need to have outlines on it because it's a very small sprite. I think that's going to be just fine. We need to set the origin point to the bottom left, and we need to pop that down here next to the timers. There we go, and that's already looking a lot better. Now we need to put some text over here to signify which lap these are. So again, with my capitals on, I'm just going to say lap 1. I'm going to copy out that and drag it down, double click in and say lap 2. I'm going to do another one and I'm going to say lap 3. And then I'm going to drag that across there so they all line up perfectly with the zeros. Well, that one doesn't. There. You might need to just drag the top section up. You just want to make sure that they line up exactly. Although I don't like how the numbers, although they are lined up, they don't look. See, the P's are all out of alignment on the lap. I think I would prefer, and this is just my personal preference, I think I'd prefer to justify them left. Yeah, that looks better to me. I mean, you can do it whatever way you want, but I'm going to leave it with that. The bottom of the flagpole needs to line up exactly with the 0, and it's not doing that because if I drag this off to the side, my grid size is 2 by 2, so it's only letting me move in 2 pixels, so I need to drop that to 1 by 1, and now I can drop this up exactly in line with the bottom of that. Again, exactly in the line. And exactly in line. Okay, great. Now the next thing we need to do is add a timer to the beginning of the level, so that when the level starts we don't automatically get thrown straight into the race. We need a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then we need to begin the race. So if you see in the setup group that we've got in the event sheet, we can see we've got on starter layout, we're going to deactivate the lap time and set the lap to 0. And then as soon as we collide with the start line or the start grid, which is there, then we start the lap time activated. But what we're not doing at the beginning is we're not setting the group which controls the car to disabled, and that's what we need to do first, which is this one here. So effectively when the level starts, I don't want the player to be able to push any of the directional buttons to get the car moving until I tell it to. So we're going to go on start a layout. So first thing we need to do is click and add an action, and we need to say system, and we need to say group, and we need to deactivate the movement. So ours is called controls, and again, ignore all these other groups because these are groups that I've got across the whole of my game. We're going to deactivate the controls group. So that means when the level starts, we're not going to be able to do anything. And if I test that for you now, we're just going to sit on the start line, no buttons are going to work. I'm pushing all the A, D, S, W keys, nothing's working, which is perfect, that's what we want. Now we need to enable the timer. So we need to get some sprites. So let's double click and we're going to add in a sprite, and we're going to change the size from 64 to 64. And I just want to get an idea of the size of this thing first. So I'm going to color the whole thing white, and I'm going to drag it right into the middle, which will be right in the middle of the level. There, perfect. That's a good size for me. Right, let's get rid of all of that. And now let's change the background color to white, and I'm going to make the sprite black. So we need a 1. So I'm going to come down 1, 2, because everything's 8 by 8, 16 by 16. It's all in multiples of 8. So I'm going to come down 8 from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going to draw until I get 8 from the bottom. I'm going to draw one on the other side because everything needs to be symmetrical. Now I'm going to come out 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to come out 8 on the other side. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I'm going to go back up. I'm going to go across. I'm going to go back up and across. But that looks like a pretty boring. This looks like a pretty boring number 1. So we're going to add in some detail here. We're going to go to the top left here, and I'm going to draw a diagonal line down. Now I don't like it to be solid black, so I'm going to make it slightly grey, maybe a little bit more, and then I can go a darker grey just to give it some shade. number 1 is done. Let's see what that looks like in the level. 1. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Now we need to come down to the bottom here and we need to add a new frame. So let's just right click and duplicate it because we want number 2 now. Let's duplicate that. Now let's make a 3. Great. There's my 3. I've rounded off the corners. There's my 2, rounded off the corners with the exception of this one and this one. Just round those corners. And then the 1 is a little bit sharp. There. And I'm happy with those numbers. Now we need to click on the animation, so we're going to set the animation speed to 1. So when we play it, it goes 1, 2, 3. But we need to just start at 3, so drag the 3 first, then the 2, then the 1, and then we actually need a 4th frame. If we duplicate that and delete the whole thing, we want the 4th frame to be nothing, so then we can play it and go 3, 2, 1, go. Well, we could write go in there, but I'm not going to bother, we've done enough pixel art. So it starts with 3, and then on the event sheet here, under starter layout, we're going to go add action, and we're going to say play. In fact, we're going to say set speed. Yeah, let's go set speed to 1, because what I want to do here is I'm going to set the speed to 0. So that when the level starts, it will set it to 1. 2, 1, gone. Okay, fine. It's on the HUD layer there. Just set it to the collisions layer. There we go. 2, 1. In fact, it doesn't need to be on the collisions layer because I don't want it to be. Because of the way the game's set up, the camera starts with the car in the middle of the level, so that will put that at the top. That does need to actually be on the HUD layer. And it needs to be right bang in the middle of the game. So if we set the grid size to 8x8 and show the grid, I want to then use the grid to be able to pop it straight in the middle. And because that's going to be somewhat overlapping some of the black, I may need to rethink the color of it. Let's go back into it. Let's give it a lighter grey tone. Okay, there we go. I've put my 3, 2, 1 in a white background. Yeah, I like that. I think it could go a little bit higher though, so it doesn't overlap. It doesn't overlap the starting grid so much. 2, 1. Perfect. I'm good with that. Now we need to set the car enabled when the countdown finishes. So we're going to say countdown, set animation speed to 1. So what we'll do is we're going to go wait, and we're going to wait for the 3-second countdown to finish, and then we're going to say group set active. And away we go. Great, so that works just fine. In the next tutorial, we're going to be adding in the other racers, so that'll be a tutorial just in itself. We're going to add in maybe at least one, maybe 2 other cars, depending on the time, depending on how difficult that turns out to be. I'm going to get them racing around the track as well, and what we're going to do is we're going to set them a little bit of AI so that if they happen to pick up a nitro and they've got a nitro in their bank, then they can actually use it if they want to. So I'm going to get that set up in the next tutorial. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking around to the end, and I will see you in the next episode.